doesn't really show you how it would be in real life.
But that's how you get an initial impression of,
right.
wow.
That gives you a shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is quite a wow factor when you go into like a Best Buy and
The
take a look
first
at
time I saw an LED, I was like, whoa, this
Yeah.
is something different.
And you go look at like the aisle with the cheap TVs, like. One thing we noticed that happens often is that at first listen, and we'll call this a human thing, right? Because we don't know if cats and dogs have this problem.
Probably.
But they might. They probably do. In fact, they're probably more sensitive than we are at first listen.
Well, listening maybe.
Especially cats. Like they hear a noise they never heard before. It scares the shit out of them, right? Until they're used to it.
Something like that.
And I mean, I guess humans could be like that too. I guess, especially if you're on home at night, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, before we get into meandering already, yeah, at first listen, sometimes you don't get it. You just don't get it.
In fact, most times, I would say.
Yeah.
And this, like everything, has a lot to do with your experience level. If you have enough experience to know what spectacular sound is without having heard it, then you could get it, but it's very rare. Most people don't have the experience of 20, 30, 40, 50 different headphones or speaker systems or whatever to really know what amazing sound is.
To hone in on what the capability, what the available capabilities are of these systems, you know. That's the thing. You might hear one or two or three things, and you really don't have a bearing on what the scope and the width or the breadth of what's available is out there, you know. And one of those one or two or three things might wow the hell out of you, but it might just be the icing on it. It might just be the beginning of where you can go, you know.
Well, you come into anything without a baseline, you have no idea how good things can get, how bad things can get, So you're kind of just like,
you're flying blind. And it seems strange when you say it out loud. I would think most people would imagine that they would get it. Most people would think, oh, surely I could tell the difference. And I think it's a bit more profound than that. It's not really that you can't tell the difference. Obviously, you know there's a difference. But inevitably, you see people for the first time trying a high-end system, someone with no experience. I've seen this in quite a few industries, but it seems to be common enough for humans to assume that naturally, of course, when you present me with something that's better, I'll know the difference. I'll know it's better. But
or worse.
I mean, well, yeah, it's usually easier to know it's worse because you already experienced better, right? But it's hard to know when something's better, how much better it is without a baseline. It takes a bit of experience to really get it. And I've seen this quite a few times. You give people a high-end headphone setup that is spectacular, and a bunch of people will tell you this is about as good as it gets. The average person can listen to it and go, meh, I'm not that excited by it. But what'll happen is that very same person, they'll hear their headphones then after that. They'll hear their cheap whatever set they have, their Bluetooth thing or whatever, and they'll say, oh, you know what, actually, this isn't as good as I remember. So what that basically does is it seems like that positive experience kind of stretches or expands your range that you know to exist.
Sure.
So what you thought was like a 7 or something like that before now got shoved down, but you don't know it yet until you go back and you listen.
And I'll multiply that by hundreds of times. We've had these experiences over and over with different stuff, different gear. It's not even just the speakers or the headphones. It's the electronics. It's the amps.
Everything.
It's the type of amp, tube, solid state. It's the cabling. It's the power delivery. It's the room they're in. You think about the variables, right, and the permutations of all these variables.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking. Yeah, because you don't know if you're not in the headphones or whatever, and you hear high-end headphones, you don't really know what you're listening to or for.
That's true.
So I mean, you got to focus in on something, usually. I think a good example is TVs. That's why with the OLED TVs, they always play things that are just black with bright, vivid colors.
Right.
So you could really focus on that. Because if you just watch a normal TV show that's just evenly lit or something,
but you see that's misleading because now they're showing you content that's tailored to their type of TV, the benefits they have.
Yeah.
So
Bowls
you would
of
never
waxed
normally,
fruit.
you would never normally see that content. So it's kind of like they're exaggerating the differences.
Right.
Doesn't really show you how it would be in real life.
But that's how you get an initial impression of,
right.
wow.
It gives you a shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is quite a wow factor when you go into a Best Buy and
the
take a look
first
at
time I saw an LED, I was like, whoa, this is something different.
And you go look at the aisle with the cheap TVs, I mean, all of a sudden you realize that, it's not even remember back in the day, things used to be before we had HDMI and high-res
Oh, it
sources.
would be terrible.
You'd have staticky or
Sure.
noise in there, and now everything's digital, so that kind of is gone for the most part. But yeah, now you either basically have a picture or don't.
Yeah.
Mostly.
But but now it's more about clarity and contrast and color, the color gambits available. It's crazy, and it's the same with audio though. It's the same thing. You suddenly the higher end opens up a whole new set of color gambits for you, a color range for you to hear, your favorite instrumental. Let's say. I mean, you probably never heard a guitar unless you play guitar. You sit in front of someone all the time that does play, like you got a family member, and even then they're usually plugged in and amplified, and that's kind of different than listening to it that's a mic'd guitar. It's a different kind of recording.
Well, because you're not listening right next to the amp.
Yeah, right. Yeah, with a 100-watt friggin' tube guitar, I mean, wall with distortion turned up. It's a studio recording, and it's done it's done totally differently.
One thing I thought was curious was, you remember when Engineering Explained on YouTube started reviewing cars?
Yeah.
At the time, he had like a Subaru Crosstrek or something like that,
Yeah.
and he was talking very positively. He reviewed it, right? And at that time, he didn't have a lot of experience. And he would say all these things about this Subaru at the time.
Yep.
And he started reviewing cars. And as a result, he got to try more cars that he normally wouldn't have tried before. And he only had a handful of cars that he drove at this time. He sold the Crosstrek. And he later then said, because he didn't like it, it wasn't actually good.
Yeah.
So he had a review saying this car is great and I like it for these reasons. He drove a bunch of other cars because he kind of got forced into it and he realized actually it's not good. Right? So that experience changes perspective.
Totally.
And it's curious because for whatever reason, humans always think that it won't. Oh, surely I know what I'm talking about. That's almost always how people feel because they don't have the experience yet to know.
Well, especially,
they don't actually know what they're talking about.
Especially as you get older and you get set in your ways and you're.
Right.
I always drove a Chevy pickup my whole life.
They're
that's
the
what I
best.
drove.
Yeah, you don't know why.
But you
they're
never
the best.
drove anything else.
right.
So
Right.
what's your reference there?
That's right. How do
a
you know?
Chevy pickup. I'm sure they're experts at Chevy pickup.
Could be.
Probably know this from 1972 to current. What
see
the
that
feel
everywhere.
is of it.
The
Right.
whole
And that's
automotive
fine.
industry.
That's fine. That's cool. There's nothing wrong
Right.
with that. But damn, to me, expand your horizons a little bit.
Well, I mean, a good example that everybody could pretty much relate to is food, I would say, because like that you could be like people that like eat the same thing all the time, never want to try anything different. They're like, oh, I don't want to try like Indian food or Thai food. Oh, that's not for me. But then sometimes you try it and you're like, oh, actually, I've been not trying this thing this whole time. I should have been.
Hey, give me the super mild Indian so I could try. It's like, oh, I like curry chicken.
Well, and beyond that, most of the time when you present someone with food like that, a lot of people think, going into it, they think, I'm not going to like it. They're conditioning themselves to not like it. And they're more likely to not be excited by it. They're more predisposed to not find it to be
For
exciting,
sure.
right?
Once you talk yourself
So
out of it
it's
or
trouble.
into it. Yeah.
And I think that's part of the issue with humans. It's very difficult to have an open mind. And in audio, that's especially prevalent. You see people all the time reviewing things that they just truly don't have the experience, but there's nothing you could do about it. You can't tell them they don't have the experience because they don't know that they don't have the experience. They think they do.
And especially at the higher end of audio, that experience is almost necessary. I mean, it's, to come in and comment or critique something without knowing what's around that something. Like,
Right.
that whole region of space, let's call it, right? The upper echelon of whatever it is. I don't care if it's wines or beers or food or clothing. If you've never, to outright just excuse it, right? To say, this sucks because it's so expensive. That's bullshit. I mean, you think about it, it's not really the way you should look at things. It's not the way, that's not how you judge things, is just by price alone. You can't do that.
A lot of people do.
It's not proper. And it's, I get it. I get why people do it because they're probably not something they're ever interested in spending that much money on.
But they don't say that.
But maybe you are. No, well, that's true too.
Right? They never say that's my issue with those sorts of things. People
Right.
never say, well, I'd never buy this, so I don't think it's good. They say, this is bad.
Right, that's
Done.
true. Yeah.
End of explanation. Well,
Right.
why?
Right.
Is it just because you don't value it? Is it actually bad? Do you not have the experience to understand the benefits?
And it's a shame because
you don't know.
You know, I get it. If you can't afford something like that, you never will. Okay,
Right.
That's fine.
That's fine.
You could say that. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people say that.
Yeah.
That's fine. I get
People
that.
with experience
You
say
know?
that.
Yeah. And when, I mean, 20 years ago, I couldn't afford this either. 30 years ago, I couldn't afford this either. I was raising a family. I had other
Sure.
I had other priorities. But at some point, you know, people can grow into things like this or grow into sports cars or better. You now you start, as you get older, you tend to have more disposable income. If you don't, I'm sorry, you know, not something we caused, but you know what I mean? I'm sorry if you don't. It's too bad. But a lot of times when people get older, they tend to look for things that they've never tried before because now they can
Right.
afford to do it. The house is paid off, and the kids are out of college. And you know, there's a lot of things that set up when you get older in life. Right? It's like, so you tend to see older people experimenting more with the higher end. But you know, I'm seeing that change too. Like now, you got all younger people that in their 20s or so that have engineering degrees, PhDs, and they're considerably more successful in their late 20s than their parents ever were. Right?
It's more common.
You're seeing
yeah.
that a lot. You know, they get a great job because they've went through the education. They got and bam, they did the work up front, and now they get to play. They got the bling. So we're seeing it both ends now.
I think the most common example is Macintosh. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
been
Because-
around for 50, 60
Well,
years.
yeah,
or
well,
whatever.
and a lot of people like back in the 60s and 70s, they're like when they were young, they couldn't afford it, and now they're
True.
like they can't afford it, so they're like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm just getting all Mac here, right?
Yeah, it's true. I went to an estate sale a couple weeks ago. I was there 15 minutes after it opened for no reason other than I wanted to check something out. And they happen to have Macintosh model box, Mac receiver, pair of older, not that old, but B&W Diamonds, some 802s. They were all sold by the time I got there. 15%. I wasn't going to buy it, but they were all sold. The Macs and the Bowers and
Yeah.
Wilkins were already
That was
sold.
like in the first like 15 minutes.
and it
or
wasn't
something, right?
cheap. We're talking, the speakers were like $5,000, you know, $6,000, and nothing was cheap. But yeah, but right, it was first 15 minutes, yeah, they really sold. So you know, it just shows to go you that. And the guy, I saw the guy that bought the speakers. He was probably no more than 30. And he was excited about it. He said he smoked his credit card. It's going to be a while. But yeah, he was excited about it. And it was something he jonesed for, and he got him. You know, and that's cool. I mean, think about what has to go on prior to that for him to make the decision to be there when the door is open to buy a used pair of speakers that you don't even know if they work because they're not working at this sale, right? You're spending that much money hoping they sound good. There's nothing wrong with them, tweeters, but you never know, right? Just woofer rubbing. Okay, he's not even worried about fixing if they need to be repaired. He's boom, you know, without even sight unseen, buys it. Damn.
Well, that I understand though, because like shipping those are, you know,
bitch.
notoriously a problem.
Yeah.
People don't have the original boxes and stuff. So I'm sure he's been looking for a long time,
True.
and they don't come up very often locally.
True.
So
Yeah.
you got to get out.
It's
You got
hard to get them
there.
used.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And we can just throw them in the back of your
Right.
your vehicle and take them home.
You got to
wrap
ship
them
them
in a
across the
blanket.
country.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but I mean, it's things like that where you see which I mean, you know, it's that stuff is to me is cool to see. You know, that the younger generation is taking so quickly into moving up the chain. You know, they're not stuck till they're waiting till they're in their 50s, till they're ready to die. Now they're getting it right. That's at that point. It's kind of, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's it's cool to see that these younger generation has some people in that have goals. You know, and audio is one of them. It's
Well,
pretty cool.
it's easier than ever. And that's not to say it's easy, but it's easier than ever to be an exceptionally productive member of society, right? You have the internet available to you and all the
Unlimited
teachings and stuff
info.
like that come with it, right? So if you really were diligent, you could spend a lot of time. You could expand your horizons pretty substantially.
True.
And I think that's encouraging, right? I guess what we try to get across in this video is try to think, more or less, is there a way that maybe I could be wrong, right? Because a lot of times people think, well, surely I know I'm right. Surely I know that this is the best. Nothing could be better than this, or there's no value in this, or something like that. Try to keep your perception a little bit more open-minded, if possible. And it's a difficult thing to do. Telling people that doesn't really get too far, right? But maybe if you give them a few clues, some evidence with time, maybe they could help kind of like shift slowly or accelerate this shift.
Maybe find some papers or books on what an open mind means.
Yeah.
Because the
How
two
to
words
consider everything.
don't cover what is an open mind.
You need to understand what it is.
Yeah, it's a philosophy, right? It's almost like if you don't understand that really fully, you need to grasp it, And I think it'll help. I think it helps people to grow in life. You're not stuck. You're not stuck.
Well, usually what happens is people end up getting there more often than not anyways. It's just it takes 60 years.
Right.
It takes a long time. It takes a lifetime a lot of times. So it would be nice if you could get there a little earlier,
If
right?
you start that when you're like 12.
Yeah, right. Well, if you can start
imagine
this
what
growth.
you'd be at 60.
Right.
You'd be going to Mars.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's usually the difference.
That's
So
true.
I think the best way to go is approach it from a perspective of how can I prove that I'm wrong rather than proving that I'm right.
Yeah. And
It's,
usually,
you could trick yourself.
Almost
and prove
always you could
yourself
find
right.
stuff to convince yourself that you're right. You could look at all these conspiracy theories, and there's always evidence that suggests that, you know what, maybe it's plausible. But if you look at it from the other way, why can't this work? Can you prove that this is not likely to be true?
and by all means, let your imagination go at it. I mean, your imagination is something where it's almost like a fantasy, or you're fantasizing, and you could use imagination to help open your mind. You're imagining how this could sound, or how this could
Right.
taste, or
How it
this
should
could-
sound or taste or
right.
be or whatever.
and then shoot for that. Why not shoot for that? I mean, that's how we started Abyss. That's how we designed these headphones. We knew how we thought. We knew what we wanted it to sound like. We just had to make it do that.
Right.
That's the tough part, but hey, you got your whole lifetime to do it, and it could be something you do on the side, like spare time, and it's a hobby. You don't have to make a business out of it. And but bottom line is, I mean, the way I see it, it's cool to have goals. Like the guy that bought the speakers, he had a goal. He was looking for them. He got them.
You want to actually accomplish something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, then,
The goal's a pretty small portion. You need to actually take the steps to get there.
Little as you know, that's just the beginning, because now he
Right.
needs amplification.
Right.
Right.
He needs at least 250 watt solid state monos for these bed. I mean, to light them up, you need some power, But yeah, that's cool. He's on the path. He's got the speakers.
Well, it helps to have the speakers.
Yeah.
That's a good start.
Yeah, he didn't get the Macs.
No.
Someone else got the Mac monos because he wasn't carrying those out. So there was multiple customers involved. Yeah, but too bad he probably couldn't afford all of it at once.
Probably.
Because you're talking some chunk of change. But yeah, bottom line, try this stuff. Try it.
Right.
Try it.
But that can be difficult to do. So I think the easiest approach, especially for younger people that just don't really have physical access, it's not reasonable for them to travel great distances at a young age to try different things. I think the best approach is try to be more gray on everything rather than black and white. Try to assume that maybe there's something in between these yeses and nos.
And keep in mind that there's a lot of
Maybe
shades
there's
of
a
gray.
maybe, right?
Well.
Because that's the reality. A lot of times it's like, well, this is good for these people, this narrow range, and then you got to consider the practicality that maybe it's not a good product.
Gray's
but
not,
maybe there's some
gray's not
people it's
one
great
color,
for.
too. There's a range of gray.
There's a lot of
which
grays.
actually goes from black to
It's
white.
like gradient
Or
I
white
mean,
to
it's
black.
practically a rainbow, right? But
Yeah.
it's a very almost everything is very difficult
of black and
when you
white
consider
rainbow.
it deeply
Yeah,
enough.
right, black and white rainbow.
Black and white rainbow.
Yeah, it's black on one end and white on the other.
Yeah.
Gray in the middle.
Everything
I
is
prefer
a
color
yes and no.
rainbow myself. I think they're way cooler looking.
It's a color gradient.
Yeah. But you can move on to color once you get past the gray.
Oh, that's
Right.
next level.
Yeah, it's next
It's like
level.
some multi-level chess kind
Well,
of stuff.
you think about when my first video game was ping pong, pong, and it was black and white, right? You had a
It was
black screen with
one bit or
with,
something
yeah,
like that,
with,
right? It's
white, with
basic,
white
on
little
and
bars
off.
that you moved up and down, and the ball was white, and it went bing, 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 bing. In case
Right.
no one's ever played it, yeah. But that was, I think, the first video game, wasn't it? Was
Yeah,
it
and
the
at the
first?
time
At
it
least
was
the
like,
commercial
woo-wee.
success. Yeah.
This is
I
the
remember when I was a
stuff.
little kid, I'd go to the department store, you put a quarter in, I used to play it with my uncle.
They were expensive too.
Yeah, and we'd play back and forth. It was pretty cool. Because people didn't at the time. They didn't have Ataris in every home,
Wow.
right? Which was the next step. Atari made a game that played in the home. But yeah, that was black and white.
And people always forget. But you look at what people said in the early days, like when the Atari came out and the subsequent gaming consoles that came out, people would say, how can it get any better? And people always said this.
Yeah.
I remember you had a computer. It had like a 1 gigabyte hard drive or something like that?
No, it was like
Yeah.
like 100 megabyte.
It was something that's
or
like
50
trivial today,
megabyte.
right?
It was a
Like
joke.
how-
Yeah.
And you were like, you'll never fill this up, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
the trouble was,
Didn't even know what to put
that's
on it.
how people thought then.
Agreed.
Because what happened is, yes, for your Word files, you're not going to fill it up. But you tend to not recognize at the time what could happen.
I could fill
And
that drive
things
with one
expand.
track, one song nowadays.
Yeah, now it's like almost all compute resources are finite. There is no computer you could buy today that has unlimited resources, or at least relatively speaking.
What's even funnier is the first Atari video games used a cassette to hold the game. It would actually, you'd load the game off a cassette. A cassette, I would imagine, somehow recorded in audio, kind of like a,
it was digital.
What do you call it?
Audio. Yeah.
Remember the modems? They used audio on a phone.
Right.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, and they'd play through and load the game off a cassette into the memory,
slow.
and then would play the game. People, I don't know how many people can even, if you're young enough, you only would have a clue that existed, but to have a game on a cassette is just so crazy.
Well, that's the thing. You show someone today Pong, they'd be like, okay.
Yeah, right.
But everybody was excited back then with it,
Yeah.
But in that circle, like when you're thinking about storing games on cassettes, you're thinking about a better cassette.
Mm-hmm.
You're not thinking about what it could be, where you have like cloud gaming and stuff like that. Now it's like photorealistic graphics to some extent. It's a massive leap. And now I think because we have this experience of having pretty good games, I think it's easier now to say you could extrapolate into the future that this will keep getting better. And it'll get to the point where it's potentially indistinguishable from reality. I think that's a plausible path.
Well, more importantly, even the first video game, Pong, allowed two people to play together.
Yeah.
Which, if you think about it, you weren't by yourself anymore. You get to share this with somebody. And the cloud gaming's like that to the 100th degree, right?
Yeah.
You got
You'd be playing with anybody from anywhere.
100 people worldwide or something.
And which is a beautiful thing when you think about it. You brought at least two people together, if not more, to play this game. And it was no option. Okay, as it got, computers started to get a little smarter, you could play against the computer.
Yeah.
They had chess games where you were playing against the computer. I remember that early. I had something like that where you play the computer. And at the early ones, you could usually beat it because it wasn't smart enough to know all the moves. Now, good luck.
Yeah, if the computer wanted to win.
Yeah, right. You'd have to set the level. But yeah, I mean, you think about all the steps we've gone through, but it's beautiful to have games where you have people sharing in the experience. And, the audio's like that too, really. You got the musicians creating the stuff, and they share it with the world. It's pretty cool. And
it's a little disconnected, but it's a shared experience nonetheless.
Yeah. With speakers and stuff, you could have it in the room.
Yeah, a bunch of people around the world all listen to the same album.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we see it all the time. Someone will throw an album on a forum. It's like, oh, you got to hear this track or this album with the 1266s. It's freaking amazing. And I mean, literally, that's cool to see that, because do you know how long it'd take if we had to go through all the shit that these guys are going through to find something? I mean, you think about the millions of records that got to be out there in the world. It's a lifetime worth of music, and multiple lifetimes. You could never listen to everything. So it's cool when people pick something out like that and share it with others. It's an experience that and the cool thing is, by them all having similar headphones and stuff, they probably at least get a good, even though the systems are different.
Yeah,
they all get a pretty good glimpse of it. Which is really cool where we've come from not that long ago. It wasn't.
Well, it's interesting because you see, especially old people complaining about kids always on their phones and things like that, right? And they worry about the pace of technology potentially outpacing humans and whatnot. And that's a reasonable concern, but you look at what's happening with the technology, and effectively what's occurring is people are developing communities. And we're seeing more of that, like you see YouTube and stuff like that. YouTube,
online communities?
Yeah, right. I mean, virtual, effectively, right? But you see YouTube basically is a community at this point. You have people more or less gathered around the same types of whatever desires and interests and things like that on different channels. And you see like-minded people in the comments a lot of times.
That's true.
Right? And it's interesting. It's encouraging. You see that's kind of what's flourishing, community, over time. Because humans tend to more or less actively seek this sort of thing. And
well, you don't want to be alone.
Most people don't. So at times, more or less, it works itself out. Yeah. So it's kind of encouraging how things are changing and adapting with the times. Yeah. But for the most part, everything's working out. Yeah. And as long as people have an open mind, maybe they could discover the audio nirvana they're looking for.
Yeah, just don't get too addicted to any of this stuff like games or whatever, because keep in mind you still have to make a living and pay the bills and eat.
Maybe you could evolve past that.
Drink some H2O. The basic necessities of staying alive. Stay healthy, exercise, get out, get some air, sun. All these things are also a part of
they are important factors
of life
to consider.
Yeah. On that note, we're getting way too deep in this. Thank you everybody for watching. Thumbs us up if you like this content. Take care.